Our timekeepers this evening are Sheila Garvey and Joanne Rooney. Wave your hand, ladies. Thank you. One of the timekeepers will indicate with a yellow card when there's 15 seconds remaining, and then hold up the red card when it's time for you to complete your sentence and stop. Does everybody see those okay? Good. Well, that said, we're going to let each candidate introduce themselves as they answer sort of the first question: who are you? Why are you running, and why are you the best person in your district? So we'll do that all in a minute, and we're going to start this evening with Mike Healy.
Thank you, Pam, and good evening, everyone. I'm running for another term on the council because I want to continue making Petaluma a great place to live, work, raise a family, and retire. Over the years, I've taken leadership roles on several important issues. I've led the fight to keep casinos away from Petaluma successfully so far. I've dedicated hundreds of hours to confirm the public rights to access our 270-acre Lafferty Ranch atop Sonoma Mountain. I recruited a developer to build a downtown movie theater, resulting in the Theater District mixed-use project with parking, I might add, that revitalized 2 blocks of Petaluma Boulevard South of previously featured blighted used car dealerships. I'm committed to meeting Petaluma's very aggressive state mandate of 1,910 new housing units for the 8-year RENA cycle away from central downtown, consistent with our approved housing element. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll hear now from Lance.
Hi, I'm Lance Keene. I've been a resident of Petaluma for 22 years. I also ran a gallery downtown for 15 years, so I have a lot of experience here. I also taught at Petaluma High for a few years. I've been involved behind the scenes a lot with politics, and I've seen how the city council seems to be doing things to the people of Petaluma instead of with the people of Petaluma. So I would like to change how we go about that. And the 6-story overlay was sort of the final straw for me to make me run for office. So that is why I'm running.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Brian?
Thank you, Pam. I was elected in 2020 when we had the worst roads in the Bay Area, and we were facing bankruptcy. The voters gave us a mandate to rebuild our city, and I'm proud that we have rebuilt our public works, our parks, and our public safety departments. We've secured $125 million of grants and cleaned up 2 large homeless encampments in the middle of our city. We've become leaders in the region in climate action, our SAFE team, affordable housing, and public transit. And I personally champion things like adding 131 units of affordable housing to our second SMART station, our Safe Streets initiatives, strengthening our tenant protections, and improving our general park maintenance. Right now, we're updating our general plan, and we're going to be kicking off a master planning process for the fairgrounds. And I'm running for another term on the city council because I want to continue to help shape this city, the city where I grew up, the city where I'm going to raise my daughter, and the city where I'm going to grow old. I hope I earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And how about you, JJ?
Yeah, my name's JJ. I've been in Petaluma for 29 years now. We raised 3 kids here. They all went to school here. They all still live here. This is my first time in politics. You might recognize that I'm a little green around the gills occasionally. I have been involved in the community since I've been here, from site council at Wall School District to PAC 84 Cub Master. I was on the board for the Chernobyl Children's Project. You might remember when they brought children from Belarus. And I had a business in town for a short period of time, Petaluma Hills Brewing Company. Unfortunately, it didn't survive. But we plan to retire here. I decided to run so that I could contribute my problem-solving skills to basically keep Petaluma the great place that it already is. Thanks.
Thank you. How about you, Frank?
Thank you, Pam. My name's Frank Quint. I come from a working class family, and I grew up in a small Midwestern town. I joined the military straight out of high school, and after completing my tour duty in the high school, I came home and went to college. where I earned my bachelor's in accounting and my master's in business. After graduating, I continued to work in the transportation sector, where I've worked for some large companies like Target and Restoration Hardware, my current employer. I've been able to put my accounting and my MBA to good use, managing budgets in excess of $100 million. I also am proud of the time that I've spent here in Petaluma working on Petaluma's Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee and Transit Advisory Committee. And I look forward to bringing my strong finance and business background to the council. My wife, Chrissy, and I are raising our 11-year-old son, Jackson, on the east side. We believe Petaluma is a great town. It's full of promise, and I know we can make it more livable by focusing on housing, economic development, fixing our roads and our pathways. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Blake, how about you?
Thank you very much, Pam. My name is Blake Hooper. I'm a candidate for Petaluma City Council for District 5. I grew up in District 5 for pretty much my entire life at this point. I now live there with my wife, Ileana, who's in the audience. We have spent a great deal of time watching as the community has grown and changed, but the most heartbreaking part has been watching neighborhoods that were once vibrant and filled with families increasingly go quiet. I am running for Petaluma City Council because I want to not only be your advocate and fight for you, but I want to fight for working families and seniors. We are a community that needs to remain multi-generational and is in desperate risk of losing that. I have a background in land use planning and economic development policy with the state. I've worked for Congressman Jared Huffman, spending time working with the most vulnerable, and worked for Sonoma County Conservation Action fighting for green belts. I sincerely ask for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Alex, how about yourself?
My name is Alex DeCarli. I was born and raised in Petaluma and I'm lucky enough to come from a family that's been here since nearly the beginning. I graduated from St. Vincent's and attended the University of Cal Poly, where I earned a degree in engineering. I went on to spend time in industry as a biomedical engineer in Europe. I returned home to run my family's small business, which has served Sonoma and Marin counties for the past 78 years. I have been doing service and volunteer work my whole life. Most recently, I've evacuated animals from wildfires, donated propane to those affected by wildfires, and I'm currently serving on the Petaluma Chamber's Government Affairs Committee. I believe in protecting what makes Petaluma special between our agriculture heritage, small town charm, and our incredible environment. Throughout life, I've been thrown into many positions where I was far from being an expert, but my determination and perseverance have always prevailed. I am not a career politician, but I am a local and someone with diverse experience. When I get elected to city council, I will draw from that experience and use it to make the best decisions in Petaluma.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now we're going to start with another question. Lance, you're going to be the first respondent to this. Gentlemen, district elections are still new to Petaluma. While city council members serve the entire city, what will be your strategy to keep connected to your district, to keep the district informed and to keep yourself informed? You've got a minute to share that.
Okay, one of the things I'm doing in conjunction with running is I've created my own little newsletter. I call it the Keen Observer, and it's on my website. And I want to make sure that people are well informed well in advance of major decisions. So I don't want the city doing things behind the scenes for months on end, and then they tell the public in the last 3 days. So that is one of the things I want to do is try to open up the process. That's one of the main things. I think that's something that everybody citywide would be very interested in. And of course, I've lived in my neighborhood, my zone, for 20 years. So I'm very familiar with the issues in District 6 as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, same question. How would you keep connected with your community, with your district, and how would you share what's going on with your district?
Thank you. We have dozens of community meetings throughout the month. If you look at the city's calendar, you'll definitely see plenty of them. I attend those regularly. I also have 3,000 people that I communicate with via email, Facebook, and Instagram. I also am connected to the schools, and I'm proud that in my first term, I really focused on rebuilding relationships with the schools via safe routes to school. And right now, every school is getting a walking audit, and we're learning about the unique issues that are going on at every single school across the city, where our police, our public works and parents and school administrators are going out there and, learning that. And I think that's how you get the local knowledge, by going out and talking to people, and not just going out and doing it yourself, but actually bringing the city along with you, bringing the community together and talking about the issues that people are facing. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, JJ.
From the days with the brewery, we got to know quite a large part of the community. And with my wife as a school teacher, we feel like we're really well connected. We're going to lean into that and keep that connection. I'm also fairly adept at social media, so I plan to use my social media accounts quite a bit to communicate to my district. But I want to be able, I'm actually looking for ways to get out and meet as many of my district members as possible, and just to get to know them. I haven't planned any type of meetings or newsletter or anything, but I do plan on keeping as closely connected as possible, learning as much as I can about the issues that face my district, like Creekwood, the best batteries, other issues, Adobe Creek.
Thank you. Frank, what will be your plan to keep connected and to spread that connection?
Sure. Being a newcomer to politics, when I started this campaign, really before even getting out, I had to sort of try to put together some thoughts around what was important to my district. And I put those down on paper and on my campaign materials. But then I went out and started knocking on doors. And so far, I've knocked on over 1,300 doors in my district. And I've talked to an awful lot of people. And I've sat out on the front streets and engaged in conversations for as long as people want to talk to me. And through that, I've become very, very versed and knowledgeable about the issues that are really impacting District 4. Beyond that, I'll continue that. I'll continue to be an open door for the district. I'll hold regularly scheduled town hall meetings. I'll attend walk, bike, and roll events, other community events, and I'll commit to publishing a regular newspaper or newsletter. Thank you.
Blake, ideas?
So one thing that helps is I'm running in the district that I was raised in, that I've lived in through most of my life. So one thing I'll be leveraging almost immediately are the community groups and the networks that I've built relationships with over the years. Obviously, my plan includes regular newsletters, social media, and email communication, but I also really want to leverage the experience I have from being Congressman Huffman's field representative. We did regular community coffees, we held town halls, we met people where they were at, and we had regular engagements with folks on schools and other sites. I intend to really make sure that folks don't have to struggle to find out what's going on, but know that they're going to be able to reach me or find out about the city through a means that is comfortable for them and easily accessible for them. And finally, I really want to focus on partnering with our schools as well, really looking for opportunities where parents who are already working and already have to take care of their kids can learn about the schools, learn about what's going on with the city, and really encompass those issues at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex, your turn to tell us how you plan to be informed and keep your constituents informed.
So a big part of my platform has been that I want to be a voice for the community. I feel that a large portion of them are not being heard and have not been heard for years. They go to meetings, they're not listened to, their agenda items pushed to the last second, and they just ultimately nobody listens to them. So that's who I want to be a voice for, is those underrepresented people in the community. I'm very deeply rooted in that district. I've had family there for long time, the next district over as well. And I've made a lot of new friends in the last several months, some of which are pretty neat people. I'm in constant contact with everybody, emailing, calling them. I had thought of something along the lines myself of doing a general email to people that wanted to stay informed so that the wool doesn't get pulled over their eyes like others have.
Thank you. And Mike?
Well, I'm going to start by arguing with the premise of the question. I think it's really important for all seven of us to represent the entire town. And as one example of that, all of the mobile home parks exist in districts 1 and 2. So the people on this dais, I guess in theory, shouldn't have to care about that, but I can tell you I sure do, and I think my colleagues on the council do as well, and I hope this group of people will as well. So there are issues that focus in some districts that are really of citywide importance, and I'm respectful of that. In terms of staying in touch, we all have phone numbers published on the website and in the Argus Courier. I think I'm the only council member whose phone number that's published is actually this phone number. Everyone else has a voicemail box. And I will continue. I've lived in District 6 for over 40 years now. I'm well connected, and I will continue to talk with everyone who wants to talk with me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And just to be clear, Brian, you're going to be the first one up on this question. So no discussion would be complete without including climate change. Petaluma is in a climate crisis, and like many other cities around the world, Petaluma is taking action. The city's website mentioned goals of rehabilitating ecological balance, restoring economic stability, and achieving our goal of carbon neutrality in our city. The city's climate action plan is named the Blueprint for Climate Action. It's now available. As a matter of fact, if nothing changes, the final draft will be presented to the Climate Action Commission and the Planning Commission next Tuesday, October 8th. And to the City Council for potential adoption tentatively on November 2nd. So climate change has a lot of moving parts. If you've been following the Blueprint for Climate Action develop, what skills or ideas or background do you have to contribute to its success should it pass in November? We'll give you a minute and a half on this.
Thank you, Pam. Well, in terms of my skills, I've been working in the clean energy space for 15 years. I was trained in city planning, so I bring that to the table. In terms of what I've done on the council, I've been, a champion for our Safe Streets initiative, promoting walking, biking, and public transit. We've got a fare free transit pilot right now. Today, we rolled out our free micro transit to help give people who don't have, access and the ability to get to a bus stop, the ability to get around the city. I've also been a champion for affordable housing near transit, and I'm proud to say that we've moved forward with over 300 units of affordable housing in our city, and that's critical because right now only 20% of the people who work in Petaluma can afford to live here. And so building affordable housing in our city is one of the ways that we can reduce emissions, but also center equity in those transitions. I've got to say that climate action, though, and taking climate action is really about the action part of it. And Petaluma, we had a forum earlier this week, and it's really, we've got all the right policies, all the right goals. We've done all the right talk. We've done great on climate talk. But I'm the council member who's actually, following through to take climate action, because you gotta follow through on implementation and not backslide. And I can say with certainty that that's me. And so if you're looking for someone who's going to take climate action, it's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just as a reminder, next we're going to go to you, JJ. What ideas, skills, or background do you have to contribute to the success of climate action?
Sorry, that seemed loud. I'm kind of a data nerd, so this is one of those issues that I enjoy digging into and really understanding. In fact, I was a bit surprised reading through the blueprint to read that there's credible evidence that sea levels will rise 10 feet by 2100. And so I actually spent part of my workday today on the NOAA maps, getting an idea of what that looks like. And unfortunately, it took me down a little rabbit hole. But this is my personality. This is what I do to try to understand. So what I would bring to the council to address climate change is my desire and ability to just really drill down on the data and try to use that to come up with ways If you're interested, I'll show you these maps afterwards. It's daunting, and I hope there's information to kind of balance that off. But yeah, I'm a data guy, so hopefully that'll help.
And Frank, what skills, ideas, or background do you have to contribute to the blueprint for climate action?
Sure. I genuinely believe that climate is one of the existential threats of our time, and I feel like we really need to move to address it. And that's why the time that I've served here in the city has been on our Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee, as well as I currently serve as the chairperson of our Transit Advisory Committee. Those two committees play a real pivotal role when it comes to climate, giving our communities safe alternatives to bike, walk, and roll, as opposed to driving our cars. Championing not just our transit system, but the greenification of our transit system. We've already started purchasing our electric fleet with our buses, and I continue to push that to go as quickly as we can. I also, in my own personal life, I've electrified my own home, and I know what a big challenge that is and how hard it is for homeowners. And if we ever want to make any headway with the existing buildings in our community, we need to have policy in the city that incentivizes and makes it easier for not just new construction, but existing construction to convert to electrification. Thank you.
Blake?
I really saw the impacts of how climate change can affect all of us when I was a disaster caseworker helping folks rebuild following the Tubbs fire. I really saw how a community much like ours can really disappear overnight when you're not prepared and you're not looking forward as to what needs to be done. In terms of my background, I worked for Sonoma County Conservation Action for several years. I focused on transit-oriented development with a focus on green belts and expanding urban growth boundaries around the county. I spent a great deal of time on our transit advisory committee, focused aggressively on how we add more paratransit and shuttles for folks who have mobility issues, as well as eventually moving to free transit. At that time, we got free transit for students and veterans, but I'm glad we've got it for everyone. On our pedestrian bicycle advisory committee, I worked very hard to make sure that we got our active transit plan in place so that we can develop for walking and biking. And on the planning commission, I lobbied aggressively for us to be modeling for us to use sea level rise modeling to determine where our development patterns will be in the future, which is something staff is currently looking at doing for our next general plan. I have a great deal of experience when it comes to active policy around climate change, and I fully intend to bring it to bear as your next representative. Thank you.
And Alex, what skills, ideas, or background do you have to contribute to the success of that blueprint for climate action?
So I am a scientist by background, my engineering background, and besides being in the propane industry, which is defined as a clean energy by the EPA, I working currently on my own ventures into alternative fuels using local resources here. You know, we have things like biochar, ultramafic rock, and different things that produce methane that can be converted to alternative energies that would help us greatly, in addition to electricity and everything else we're using with solar. I think that being environmentally conscious starts at home and how you practice and what you do in your own life, not just what you say. And so, in my own personal life, I reuse things as much as possible. I try to cut down on plastic consumption. I've had the same pickup truck since I was 14 years old. I don't buy new cars all the time. And I think that consumerism is really, it's driving so much waste and useless spending that we're wasting our resources by doing that. So I think that I'm quite skilled in coming into this to work with just about anybody and analyze any data or projects or anything that we want to do for the future so that we can make sure generations are able to keep going in Petaluma.
Thank you. Mike, same question, skills, ideas, or background to contribute to the blueprint success?
So I don't think you're going to find a lot of daylight between the seven of us on this issue. I think we're in agreement. It's an existential issue and it's all hands on deck. I have the privilege of being the first Petaluma official since Helen Putnam, believe it or not, to serve on the statewide board of directors of the League of California Cities. And I was able last year to get environment and climate change added to the league's statewide top list of 4 priorities. It hadn't been there before, and I partnered with a few other folks to get that on the list, so that was a big achievement. And I also instigated what turned out to be a 2-hour discussion at the board on legislation that would have given cities like Petaluma the opportunity to have a CalPERS-free, fossil fuel-free CalPERS portfolio. That didn't pass this year, but we're still already talking about the next session and working with the author's office. I think the climate action plan has some really interesting ideas. I think there are a few things in there that need to be thought through a little bit more thoroughly. One is parking meters around town with dynamic pricing. I don't know that the community knows that that's in there. I don't know how well that would be received. And then there's this really awesome goal of getting 85% of the existing building stock off of natural gas, but it's based on grant programs that don't exist yet. So I think we need to do a little bit more homework on that. Thank you.
And Lance, the skills, ideas, or background that you have to contribute to the climate action?
Well, my day job is literally a landscape photographer. I've actually photographed over the last 20 years the changes in the landscape. I've personally witnessed places change over time. There are many subjects that I've actually photographed that are gone now. They literally burned up. They're not here anymore. I've also been a member of the Sierra Club for 35 years, and I'm married to somebody who works for the California EPA. You learn a lot. Yeah, I practically feel like a scientist sometimes when I hear from her. As far as action, I see things like the David on Smith Ranch development that violates vehicle miles traveled and puts parking lots over in a wild area with red-legged frogs. And I just don't think that's a good idea. And I also see like Oyster Cove got approved with 130 units, with many of them with 2-car garages right across the street from our bus transit center and right next to our downtown train station. So you have over 250 parking spaces put there, and they're all going to be dumped onto D Street. And I'm just looking at it and going, that doesn't seem like a good idea. And then also I see the Purple Cup recycling. It would be great if it was with ceramic or glass or something like that. Because I'm married to somebody from Cal EPA, I know that plastic is not benign. And we should be avoiding use of plastic in every chance we get. So that's my background.
And that would be my reason for apologizing for furnishing everybody with this nice water bottle. I just didn't have time to go out and get monogrammed, cups for them, but it's not lost on me. Thank you, gentlemen. JJ, you're going to be first up with this. And it's kind of an overlap with what we just discussed. We're going to talk a little bit about roads and traffic and alternative transportation. So a desire to promote alternative means of transportation has reduced and even free smart train, bus fares, and the introduction of the rideshare Luma Go, which was right outside the building when we came in this afternoon. So to encourage safe bicycling, parking's been adjusted on east and west side streets, which have been met with mixed reviews. Which of any of these strategies to encourage safe bicycling do you support and why? And that'll be for a minute, please.
So I support all of the strategies. I'm a little worried about being properly measured. I'll give D Street as an example in the loss of parking. I think it's the right thing to do to get us out of our cars. To force people out of their cars, I think is maybe a little heavy-handed. I'd like to see complete streets progress a little bit more so that the encouragement to use other modes of transportation are there for me instead of the discouragement of the headaches of trying to find parking downtown. Luma Go is a great idea. I tried to use it. I signed up a week ago only to discover that I live outside the area. So I'll have to plan accordingly, or at least leave comments to get it to change. So I think I support all the efforts.
Frank, how about you?
Sure, thank you. So our roadways, most of our roadways in Petaluma were designed decades ago before we had modern, safe street standards. So as we continue to improve our pavement and rebuild our roadways, we need to do so with an eye on incorporating modern complete street standards, design standards, so that we can not only improve flow, but also improve safety for people who walk, bike, and roll. We need to continue to invest. I believe it's critical for our climate and our roads and our traffic to invest and build out our active transportation network to give folks alternatives to driving their cars. We need to continue to evolve our transit system so that we make it more accessible to get to be able to get on both sides of the town more easily. I'll stop there. Thank you.
How about you, Blake?
So I certainly support the Luma Go. I think that's a really nice addition to our town. Like others have said, I want to see us adopt a full complete streets model that allows us to have multiple modes of transit easily accessible on most of our roads, making it easy for people to decide which transition they can make and why. We absolutely need to focus on expanding our public transit if we're realistically going to make a mode shift in this city. And that means having a circular transit route that can actually break off and go into neighborhoods with shuttles and other options. And that's going to require having the Caulfield Crosstown connector in place so we can actually have a proper transit loop that'll then allow us to have the bus transit alternative that we've been talking about for so many years. Outside of that, I have 15 seconds left. Outside of that, I also want us to focus much more on sidewalk repair and how we bring that within the city, because we can't get to bicycles if we can't walk around our own neighborhoods. And we have so many people with mobility issues in this city alone. I know I've come across it throughout our district. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Your thoughts do you support any of those strategies, including the yay or nay on the adjusted parking opportunities?
Oh, I absolutely support making the streets safer for everybody. I think I'll start with D Street, though. That's in my district and a hot button topic where all the residents there have lost their parking. The auto lane's been narrowed down, and that's a major trucking route. So what the city has done is with their pilot program, they've taken from the people who live there and they rely on it every day. And, some of them are elderly, or when they have services come, or the church down the street that has people in their 90s that now have to park around the corner and walk. I think all of that is very, very wrong to do in the name of cycling. And I say that as a cyclist. Spent thousands of miles riding around here, and it's not the right thing. Just 2 blocks over on B Street, we have a very nice set of bike lanes and low traffic. I think that when you encourage children to ride on a bike lane inches from a semi truck, you're asking for a lot of trouble.
Thank you. Mike, your thoughts?
So I agree that we should try to make our streets safe for all modes of transit, but recognize that this town was built over the last several decades as a car-dependent community, and it's not going to be simple to get people out of their cars, just the way that the town is built and laid out. I've supported the Lynch Creek Trail. I've supported the Smart Trail. I support the new trail under 101 and the Smart Trestle. I did not support the D Street project for the reasons Alex mentioned. And I think the community really needs to us to pursue a crosstown connector that we can actually achieve. And with all due respect to the council majority, Caulfield has a $55 million funding gap that there is no plausible explanation for how that can be achieved. So we're just wasting $3 million in this year's budget on that.
Thank you. Lance, your ideas on encouraging safe bicycling, et cetera?
Yeah, well, back in the 90s, I used to ride my bike over the hills of San Francisco 9 miles a day. So you definitely develop a bicyclist mentality, and you definitely prefer to have your bike lanes separated from traffic. Back then, the bike lanes were horrible in San Francisco, and you basically took your life into your hands. And I would love it when I get to Golden Gate Park. It was like heaven. So we need to have complete streets that are actually separated. Just drawing lines in the road is not enough. And also, I think I would concentrate more on completing a few streets instead of just trying to put bike lanes everywhere, especially the way it was implemented on D Street was pretty badly implemented. That's a truck route, and as a bicyclist, I would prefer just to go over to B Street and not be on D Street. So there's a lot of problems with that. And also, I'd like our transit to remain free if we can and expand the routes and publicize the routes better.
And Brian, same question.
Thank you. On the prior question, I talked about climate talk versus climate action, and we just saw what that looks like. Because right here, we just saw a bunch of candidates backslide on what is the most sensible climate action we can take, which is making it safer for people to choose not driving. So I'll just point that out. On the topic of crosstown connectors, Caulfield was not even on the radar before I ran in 2020, and I ran and said we need to do it. We're going to have a shovel-ready project by the end of next year. This time next year, we'll have a shovel-ready project. So with all due respect to Mr. Healy, what has he been doing for 24 years? If we can't, if Rainier is, why wasn't he pursuing a more affordable crosstown connector? The reality is that Caulfield provides better level of service for our public safety teams. It provides an opportunity for transit, as Mr. Hooper talked about, and it also provides the most traffic relief for our entire city. So if you're looking for someone who's going to get something done on transportation, vote for me.
Thank you very much. We're actually going to leave transportation for a while. This one, we're going to start with Frank. Let's talk homelessness. Homelessness is frequently mentioned as a key concern in every city. Are you satisfied with what's currently being done by the city around homelessness? And what would you change or add, if anything? In a minute, please.
So I feel like the city's made great progress with homelessness. When it comes to homelessness, I think one of the things that's really easy to overlook is the fact that we really need to start early. I learned so much about this not only the problem, but the solutions by sitting down and talking with the folks at Petaluma People Services and all the work that they do, how they get involved with young kids that are at risk, and how they fight every day to keep people in their homes. So because they know that once someone loses their home, it costs 10 times as much to get them back into a home. So we really need to support our nonprofit organizations that are continuing to do the good work. That's the best thing that we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake.
So I got a great view into how the city addresses homelessness when I was a caseworker and spent a great deal of time working with Elise Hempel and PPSC, specifically on how you keep families housed, how you get people rapidly rehoused. What our city's done in recent years has been a great start, but aside from needing to work closer with PPSC, focusing a lot more on wraparound services combined with smaller cottage units and easier to enter housing opportunities. We also need to look at expanded rapid rehousing grants and start partnering with our schools. What Frank said is exactly right. it starts early. The sooner you can help people get out of this cycle and get them the services and support they need, the less likely they are to be homeless. And that's why I really want the city to partner with schools around wellness centers and other support programming early so that kids have the tools they need, not just to deal with the economic circumstances of their own families, but also plan for their own futures. Thank you.
Alex, same question. Are you satisfied with what's currently being done by the city? And what would you change or add, if anything?
So I agree that it does start at a young age. And I think that, once you have it though, then you've got the problem of, what do you do with people that are homeless? And I think it starts with, you have to treat people first like they're human, and always remember that. And people need a purpose every day to get up and get out of bed. And that, I don't see a lot of that in maybe programs statewide. I think Petaluma does things differently, but not statewide, because you see the number of homeless that are everywhere, and it's really a terrible thing. And so I think it starts with giving people purpose. People need a job, a reason to feel like they should exist. I may be a little bit different than some. I do run into homeless a lot, and oftentimes I sit and talk to them and try to make them feel like they're human again. And quite frankly, most of them have very interesting stories, and I'll just stop there.
And Mike, homelessness, is the city doing enough? Would you do something differently or more or less?
Well, I think it's fair to say that the city has really upped its game in this area over the last few years. We have the new Project Home Key Hotel at the north end of town. We have the many homes behind Mary Isaac. COTS has reconfigured its dorms because they are now serving a much older population than they used to in the past, people who don't want to get on the top level of the bunk bed. But, this is not a Petaluma issue. It's a statewide issue. And when you talk to city leaders in San Diego or Bakersfield, the story you get repeatedly is that for every 10 beds they are able to create and move people off the streets, another 14 people show up. And it's just way too easy for folks to fall off the bottom rung of the ladder. And so I would like to see more of a focus on going upstream. And the other challenge for us is the state budget. We're highly reliant on that, and the state budget is not in great shape this year. We avoided major cuts, but it's a year-to-year thing.
Thank you. Lance, ideas on homelessness in Petaluma?
Well, this is one area where I think the city is doing very well, working with the nonprofits and with their plans. It sounds very impressive. And my emphasis would be on shelter first. And I know that they're creating lots of new places for people to have shelter. So in this area, I think the city is actually doing quite well.
Brian?
Thank you. For those who don't know, we owe a lot of the progress on homelessness to our council member, Dennis Postacay, who's been working tirelessly ever since he got on the council on this. So I just want to give him a shout. Okay, back to me. When I got on the council, I was avidly advocating for tiny homes, and we didn't have support on the council. And then something changed and we did. And so far we've deployed 85 units of transitional housing. And I'm proud to say that I was championing that right from the very start, because we had 2 large encampments right in the middle of our city. Also, I want to talk about tenant protections. We talk about not letting people fall off the lower rung of the ladder. We strengthened our tenant protections this year in a few different areas, and I'm proud to say I was championing that, and Mr. Healy voted against it. But 2 key things that we did is we increased relocation assistance for people who get evicted for no fault of their own. So if someone moves in their grandson and you get evicted, we make sure that you get 2.5 months, because that's what it takes. We also added protections for victims of domestic violence. So that you do not evict a woman after she's been beaten up. Thank you.
All right, you're up, JJ.
I think Petaluma does a fairly decent job helping the homeless. We have great community outreach. I think we can help with an outreach to those who aren't homeless. How can they help? What can they do? Help to integrate homeless instead of ostracize them. I'll give you a great example. I've been a poll worker since 2012 and mostly at the Lucchese Center. The county has a protocol in place to help homeless vote. It's easy, it's simple, and it makes them included members of the community. And it was creative. It was an excellent idea. It works. And we should look for every opportunity. For example, requirement-free housing might be more of an answer so people actually take advantage of housing instead of moving out because they can't meet the requirements.
Thank you. Well, we're going to sort of keep in the vein of housing. Blake, you'll started this for a whopping minute and a half. So in March of this year, the Argus Courier reported that the city of Petaluma has achieved over 20% of its housing allocation requirements in year one of an 8-year housing cycle. This information comes from a state-mandated annual progress report on the city's regional housing needs allocation as part of the city's housing element, which addresses the city's housing need for the 8-year period through 2031. Now, that housing element's a requirement under our general plan and facilitates production of housing for different income levels, households, family types, to promote fair housing, according to that staff report. So that still leaves 80% of the regional housing needs unmet. The state regulations have added potential penalties for Petaluma and others if we fail to meet our goals. In your opinion, where should Petaluma be building housing and why? That's a minute and a half. That's the bottom line. Where and why? And we've got goals.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. So, in my opinion, Petaluma needs to be taking kind of a broad strategy when it comes to dealing with housing. A lot of assumptions are that you're going to put all of your housing in the center of town. Yes, you can put some higher density housing around the train station, especially that huge empty spot that used to be the train yard. That makes perfect sense for a 100% affordable higher density project. But that's only going to get you so far. We need to be looking at how we implement infill throughout the city, throughout our neighborhoods. This is why I've talked a great deal about cottage units, row housing, duplexes, and quadplexes. These are things that we've built in the past. These are things that you can design to look beautiful. They can look like they belong in your neighborhood, and they can start to fill those infill spots that we have all over town. We are, by definition, a city that is focused on transit-oriented development and smart growth. And if we're really going to follow through with that and meet our arena allocation, we're going to have to get creative. That's why I want to see this level of infill, because it'll give opportunities to allow seniors to downsize if they should choose to, just because of the smaller square footage. And it will also allow first-time families to be able to have a better shot of getting access to a home. I also want to see us focus heavily on how we process ADUs with standardized blueprints and planning so that it's faster and cheaper for people to look at putting ADUs in their backyards. We need to have a dispersed plan to achieve this goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's hear from Alex. Thank you.
Yes, so, Petaluma does need more affordable housing, but it's awful expensive to do. It's not quite as affordable as it sounds. So we need to figure out ways to make that more affordable in working at the level with contractors. I spoke to one the other day who found a new manufacturing company that was able to cut his costs so much that he's now competitive with much larger companies. I think that, with housing, I think if we really focus on our economy, we can make it easier for people to live where they work. And, to live where they work, and in that way, it makes it easier for public transit. They don't have to commute every day in and out of town, and yeah, that's about all I got.
Thank you. Mike?
So what people need to realize is that the projects that comprise that 20% and the things that follow behind them all have very, very lengthy lead times. They don't just materialize overnight, and they're in the process for years and years and years, and they finally get over the finish line. And they're economically challenged. I'd say the ones that we've achieved so far were some of the easier ones. I think some of the other things identified in the housing element are going to be more difficult to bring to fruition, quite frankly, but I do support encouraging ADUs. The city has taken some steps in that area. I think we should be ground truthing assumptions, financial assumptions about what's achievable in terms of these different goals that we have, because a lot of the times they're just things that are put out there and wouldn't this be nice, and there's really not a lot of economic analysis behind them. And I wanted to turn briefly to Mr. Barnacle mentioned the 131 units of affordable housing at Corona Road, which he has championed, and he has. But what he didn't mention is that that site is within the 100-year floodplain. And the reason why you see a huge dirt pile out there is that was brought on so it could be spread over the site to raise the property out of the floodplain. And when that happens, the flood water that used to stay there will go right across the street into the mobile home parks across North McDowell. Thank you.
Thank you. Lance, where should we be building our housing?
Well, I think we should be doing transit-oriented development and doing more compact housing closer to transportation nodes, and also future activity centers that they're proposing to do through the 15-minute city plan and the general plan. Right now, we have a disincentive within our impact fees for creating smaller units because it's on a per unit basis, it's not done by square feet. Whereas a commercial project is charged by square feet for its impact fees. So a 10,000 square foot commercial project will pay more than a 5,000 square foot commercial project. But the way we have it now, if you do a 400 square feet a condo or a 2,000 square feet townhouse, you're paying the same impact fees. So there's a great disincentive. And actually in the 8-year plan, the housing element plan, there's a quote that talks about this issue. And I will be making a post in the near future in more detail of what I think we should do. It's hard to address in 1 minute, so.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, I would agree that some of the numbers reported are misleading. For the last decade, we've only been occupying 160 new homes a year. So that's rental and for sale. So it's important that we actually look at how many homes we're producing and doors we're opening each year. We need to be building more housing. We want it to be located along our major corridors. We want it to be located near local businesses so that it provides feet on the street for them. I've been criticized for supporting building housing in and around our downtown, but when you look at our downtown and the fact that 90% of our businesses close at 6 p.m., if we can put feet on the street so that people are coming home to downtown instead of going away from downtown at that time, our businesses will be able to stay open for an extra 2 to 3 hours a day. And if they can earn revenue and profit for an extra 2 to 3 hours a day, it helps with those high fixed costs that they keep complaining about, such as rent and insurance and things like that. So I think part of making our town more vibrant and making us more resilient is putting housing close to businesses, close to transit, and making sure that we actually approve affordable housing when it comes forward, because my colleague, Mr. Healy, has a track record of voting against affordable housing, and that we just can't do that. We've got to be building affordable housing. Thank you.
All right, JJ, where should we be putting that housing?
Well, I'm going to keep this a little short because I'm going to agree with a lot of what Mr. Hooper said. I agree that near transit infill is we should be looking for ways to up our infill. ADUs are a great method. I'm unaware of the impact fees, but if that's the case, then that's absolutely something that we should be looking at. So I question whether affordable housing would ever be achievable downtown just because of the cost of development there. But if it can be done, I agree with the concept of bringing people living in those work centers, keeping the businesses as was mentioned. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. And Frank,
So I think it's helpful to continue to revisit the stats to illustrate how big of a problem this is. It wasn't that long ago that the median price in this town for a home was about $330,000. Now it's coming up on $1 million. So working class families can no longer afford to move here. My children, my 11-year-old son's not going to be able to afford to live here if we don't do something. And I want to be able to live here when I retire. So 414 Petaluma Boulevard North was a mid-pen housing project that completed recently. It had 44 units, and within just a couple of days of taking applications, they had already exceeded 1,200 applications for 44 units. That tells you how critical the need is. So we absolutely need to continue to focus on building affordable housing, but not just affordable housing, workforce housing as well, whether that's condos or flats. I do get leery about continuing to build apartments because I don't want us to have rental apartments be our only option. We need to be able to invest in our homes. So I think condos and flats and townhomes are a great way to get started to be able to increase some of that density. I think it should be a blend throughout the city with a priority near transit centers and staying away from flood zones. Thank you.
thank you. Alex, your first up for this next question. Just checking to make sure I didn't miss somebody. We've got a few questions from the audience. And share what the heck here. This actually would be right up your alley as a young person. So in the audience, we have a person who says that in 2052, they will be elected the president of the United States. So what do you envision for Petaluma to look like, and what are you going to do now to make sure that that will happen? So I'm thinking 2052, we've got like 30 years worth of action. Where do you see Petaluma, and what do we need to do now to have it meet your vision in 30 years? And let's do that in a minute. Okay.
Well, I certainly hope that by 2052, Petaluma still resembles itself a little bit. We have such amazing heritage here. I hope that, this next incoming council, myself, future councils can preserve that. As far as what councils can do, Petaluma was built on its economy. We were an agriculture economy. We were a river town. We supplied goods and food to San Francisco. I think that our economy's been in decline for a long time, and I think that in order for Petaluma to thrive, what we need to do is bring that back. We need to be proactive in bringing industry here and bringing career jobs here so that people can again live and afford to be in Petaluma. And yep.
All right, Mike, what's your 30-year vision, and how do we get there from here so that our future president will be happy?
So the good news is that Petaluma voters will have the opportunity to extend the life of our urban growth boundary in November to 2050, and just 2 years short of 2052. That will pass overwhelmingly. There's not even any organized opposition. So hopefully you will still be able to see cows and wine grapes when you drive out of town in any direction. I think that's part of the charm that people love about this town. We will continue to face pressure from the state to add population, so we will have to be doing more and more infill going forward. I do agree with Alex that we are having some challenges on the economic side, especially with the exodus of manufacturing jobs, both out of the city and out of the region and out of the state. And I don't think we're unique in that regard, but the cost of housing has a lot to do with that, and the incommutes that employees have to tolerate to work here. Thank you.
Lance, your 30-year vision.
Okay, well, I think we should be concentrating on more local economy and not having long supply chains and doing things locally and doing things more organically and having less need to drive long distances to do your daily tasks. So, of course, the Europeans figured this out centuries ago. They have little shops on the first floor with housing up above, and it's all nicely dense so that people can find something interesting to do or a good place to eat, within just a short walk. So it would be nice that people wouldn't have to get into cars to go everywhere. So that would be my vision. And also just restoring wherever we can the natural ecosystem of what is currently green space. So we shouldn't be paving over any additional green space, and we should be trying to restore to its native habitat what green space we have.
Brian, 30 years, and you've got somebody at home that will probably care also.
I do. I think she's listening. So we've got two amenities in our city that really right now are being underutilized. One is our river and the second is our fairgrounds. So when I think about what Petaluma is going to be like in 2050, we're going to have people walking their dogs at 8:30 at night in our downtown. We're going to have hundreds, if not thousands of people going to our fairgrounds on a regular basis every day and gathering there, continuing to have our local fair and things like that, but really making it the geographic heart of our city. We're going to have a world-class river park that stretches from Ellis Creek to the Denman Reach. And we're going to have buses running every 15 minutes along our major corridors to help people get around so that everybody can access anywhere in this city. And we're going to have a working class. We're going to have a resurgence of our working class. We're going to bring back families to our city. And it's going to be a place where everybody can live and coexist, and no matter what your income is, your age is, or your abilities. Thank you.
Thank you. JJ?
So I'll be 92, I guess, and still immature. So I'm hoping to get around town on my hoverboard then. But I agree, the river is massively underused. Every time I'm on the river with my kayak, I always want to pull up to Brewster's and get out for a beer, but I can't because there's no way to get out at that point. So I think we need to encourage tighter integration into the river. I think it's important for us to keep what makes us unique. Petaluma is a very, what was the term, vibiest town. We've got a personality that's ours, and we should strive to keep that no matter what. Mr. President.
Thank you, Frank. Frank, you're next.
What a great question. I just started writing down, great vision things for our city, a lot of which was already mentioned. We're gonna have an awesome active transportation network. We're gonna be able to walk, bike, and roll wherever we want to go on those. The e-bikes are gonna be amazing in 30 years from now, I guarantee it. Our town's gonna be running on renewable energy. We're going to have an amazing transit network. We are going to see, more population. We're going to grow in that time, and the urban growth boundary will still be in place. And so there will be infill housing. We're going to have a thriving downtown with a world-class trestle. I guarantee it. We're going to get that thing built. The fairgrounds is going to be amazing, and we're going to have electric cars racing on Petaluma Speedway.
Thank you, Blake.
I agree with most of that. Obviously, our urban growth boundaries are fully protected, and we've barely grown in that way. We've fully solidified protecting our open space and our wetlands. Our historic downtown and much of what represents kind of our historic feel and culture has been protected, but we've also evolved as well as certain things have changed. Working families are filling our neighborhoods again, and grandparents can actually see their kids on a regular basis, not just when they're not just when they're coming back from Utah or Minnesota or Arizona. Our transit system, we finally built it out because we built the Caulfield Crosstown Connector, and we've actually made that circular loop so we can get shuttle service throughout the city, allowing people to just genuinely choose that option without having to think much about it. We've built the infill housing that we need, but are probably still continuing to grow and having a lot of these conversations. And we have a gorgeous downtown and community to walk through with, yes, a wonderful trestle added on. Thank you.
Oh, how creative you all are. Alex, you're going to start the next, excuse me. Did you answer that question? You didn't. You did?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, phew. Oh, is it Mike's turn? Okay. Go for it, Mike.
Next question.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I thought, oh no, but the circle says that Mike starts the next one. I was just caught up in the vision, the vision of where we were. And I was with you all that way. All right. Well, it was inevitable and apt to come up, how to go around this. At a previous forum, there was a shared agreement on interest to bringing the Planning Commission back in-house. The audience is wondering if it's possible to share what your vision is for downtown Petaluma and how that fits in with a concept of making changes and adjustments, maybe called an overlay, to move it, how that fits in with your vision of a vibrant downtown Petaluma. Mike, go for it. 2 minutes.
2 whole minutes.
Yeah, yes, it's a big one, I know.
Okay, fair enough. There was actually consensus at the last forum to bring the planning department back in-house, not the planning commission.
Oh, thank you for that correction, you're right.
Yeah, so that was done in 2008 when we were in the midst of a financial crisis. And the financial crisis has passed, and I think it's high time to bring the planning department back in as a city employee staff department. With respect to downtown, I have my background before I was on the council was in the historic preservation community. I was a vice president of Heritage Homes. I fully support maintaining the historic character of our downtown, and yet at the same time, I realize that we need to have a functioning economy there. There are certain kinds of uses that were there 50 years ago that are never going to come back. I don't think you're going to see a department store. That ship has sailed. But we need to make downtown economically vibrant in the post-COVID and Amazon era. And so those are challenges. It's not unique to us, certainly. I don't support the overlay. I don't think it's needed. We're going to have an interesting conversation next Monday at council with the overlay draft EIR, especially now that EKN is facing a foreclosure sale of its $110 million property at North Shore Tahoe. And that's the same group that wants to build this hotel. So we don't need the overlay to meet our RHNA housing numbers in this current cycle. But I am committed to reaching out to property owners on an individual basis and trying to understand what their issues are and how we can work with them. And I have a track record of doing that recently. And if you gave me more than 2 minutes, I'd talk about it.
Thank you very much for doing what you could in 2 minutes. Lance, your thoughts? Your
Yes.
vision for downtown and how, something like an overlay fits in.
I founded and ran the Riverfront Art Gallery for 15 years downtown, so I'm very familiar with the business climate there. And as I was there on many Friday and Saturday nights manning the gallery, I'd meet people from all over the Bay Area. And it basically dawned on me that we have the most vibrant downtown between San Francisco and Portland. And the basic thing we need to do is to make sure that things like our permitting process and functions like that are expedited, because I know of horror stories where people are waiting months and years just to get a permit to operate. And so I think, if we want to support our local businesses, we should have an expedited permitting process. I think the current design guidelines for the historic downtown are totally fine. They were established in 1999, and the downtown was declared a historic district, a registered National Historic District back in 1995. And people come here for that. And in fact, a lot of people moved here for that. So people take that very seriously. And that's actually one of the main reasons I'm running, is to oppose putting high-rise buildings in our downtown. I think our town is great. The downtown is great as it is, to keep its historic status. And we have lots of great events. We just had the Antique Fair this weekend, and we have beautiful parades. We have the largest Veterans Day parade in the whole Bay Area. There's lots of activity. So I think mainly it's just a matter of the city supporting small businesses and making sure they have what they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, your thoughts?
Yes to improving our permit processes. Yes to outreach to businesses. We all love our downtown and the beautiful buildings in our downtown, but our downtown can be more. We have to have the prime pieces of real estate in our city paying more in property tax than I do if we want to have a vibrant downtown, if we want to be able to pay for things like rehabilitating the trestle, if we want to pay for things like the $5 million seismic upgrade at our historic museum. We've got to have a vibrant downtown economy that's really healthy. I support the overlay. We've seen 20 years of stagnant growth. So with all due respect to Mr. Keene, we haven't, our current zoning has not been facilitating the orderly development of our city, which is what the purpose of zoning is. We've got empty storefronts. We've got blight. The overlay offers us an opportunity to take a step forward. It offers us an opportunity to turn a chain link fence into an asset for our downtown. It offers us an opportunity to put feet on the street for our local businesses. And what I hear over and over again is, yes, I want it to look good. And I absolutely do too. And that's why I'm focused on the policy. I'm focused on adding provisions to the policy to help us have more oversight in how it's going to look. Require the developer to bring forward 3 architectural renderings so that we have more influence over how it's going to blend in. I'm also, closely looking at if we can bring in some sort of a design review process specifically for the overlay so that we have professional architects that are opining on how it's going to look and blend in. But just saying no isn't the answer. And my opponents are proving that you can just say no and scare people if you use social media and 90-second sound bites, but that's not going to help us build a thriving downtown. And that's why I've been endorsed by our police and our fire unions, because they don't want to go back to the brink of bankruptcy the way they were when Mike was running the show. Thank you.
JJ, your thoughts on what the downtown, your vision for downtown and how that fits with the possibility of an overlay?
Well, it doesn't involve hoverboards, unfortunately. Oh, no one got that joke? Sorry.
I got it.
Thank you. I am not a fan of the overlay. I think it exists for the purpose of the hotel. I think if we're going to do an overlay district, it needs to be designed for the purpose of what does it bring to downtown, not what does it do for one single development. I'm a little worried about, in fact, I'm not sure that will address the empty store spaces that we have downtown. I'm a little worried about the fact that many landlords are asking for 10-year leases. Very difficult if you want to open up a new business to sign a 10-year lease. Rents are very expensive. If we increase property taxes, does that add to the cost of rent? And I also feel that, and I speak from experience, the permitting process is hell. I spent 8 months trying to permit my brewery and never got them, never got my construction permits. And it was a lack of understanding of what the tap room is to a brewery. I fought the planning department the entire time. And so I think that's one of our biggest impediments to filling some of the downtown empty spaces. Oh, I'm sorry, if I have a few more seconds, I think it's vitally important that we keep our historic nature of downtown no matter what we do. And I would advocate for an architectural design review committee for any new construction.
Thank you. Frank, your thoughts?
Sure. Like everybody up here, I love our downtown. I love the historic nature of it. I certainly wouldn't do anything to destroy it. I think back about, what was, wasn't that long ago prior to 2020, Petaluma was still pretty broke, right? We got into serious financial trouble in the 2008, 2009 housing crisis, and that continued all the way up till 2020 until Measure U passed. So with Measure U, we've just been able to start taking care of the basic needs. We've started to fix roads. We've started to actually hire police and fire and have our public safety. But we're just treading water. And there's a lot of great things we can do to make the city better. A lot of the ideas that you've heard with the trestle and the fairgrounds and investing in our parks. I'm a big fan of investing in our public pools and making that a great thing as well. But to do that, it's going to take money, and that means we either have to raise taxes, we have to take out bonds, or we have to build our economy. And I think that as a community, we need to come together and agree on a way to get some kind of zoning change done to incentivize some economic development downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Blake?
Like everyone else, I love our historic downtown, and I want to do everything we can to protect it, but also see it grow into the future. I think we can protect what we love and build what we need. My biggest concern for the downtown is, frankly, our lack of design review guidelines or our lack of design review process, and also that we have not updated our historic resources survey list in quite some time, and we don't have a lot of regulations on the books to see that expanded. That's why when it comes to the overlay, if it were presented to me the way it is now, I'd vote no, and I think the hotel designs are ugly. However, I do want to engage with the process that we have now to see if we can modify the overlay to get design review, to get to historic design standards that actually reflect the historic district, not Theater Square, but the historic district, to add parking requirements for any construction outside of the historic district so that we don't have to worry about parking getting worse, and to require historic resource surveys to go through for any new development that would come into those areas. I'm really focused on seeing if we can modify this to be a tool to get us the things that we currently don't have. I understand that there are folks who would just say, let's wait for the general plan. Let's wait until we have a master plan. Realistically, the city's not going to be done with the general plan for at least another 2 years. I think if we're being honest with ourselves, it'll be a bit longer than that. So I would like to do my damnedest to modify this thing that, if we're being honest, was not presented in a great way and went through a rough process. Modify it and fight to make it provide the kind of protections our downtown currently doesn't have. Because right now, you can still build a hideous 4-story building. And I have a problem with any building coming into our downtown not having better design standards and requirements. And if those changes can't be made, I'll just vote no. And I've got a record of this. Our last planning commission meeting, we made these exact amendments along with our HCPC, our Historic Review Committee, to the council, asking for these changes to the draft EIR. Thank you.
And Alex?
So for me, the overlay doesn't fit, not at all. We've got a 4-story height limit here and going up to 6, and then the possibility of 9 stories. That's too much for Petaluma. That's too big, and we'd end up looking like Santa Rosa or some suburb of Marin or some greater part of the Bay Area. Petaluma is unique. We have a character unlike any others, and we need to protect that. The hotel itself, that's what spurred it all. That's the vessel for the overlay. It does not preserve our sense of place here. This has been mentioned. We don't have really design standards here, and so developers come into town and they go, well, here's our project. We don't really know what you want. And, and then we've got different Senate and Assembly state bills that are coming out that that can affect things depending on the project. You know, like I mentioned, we could end up with buildings as high as 9 stories if the overlay is approved. That's just crazy. And then to make it worse, there's another bill that if you're within a half mile of major public transit, you don't have to have any parking for your project. So imagine a sea of 9-story buildings downtown with thousands of units in them and thousands of displaced cars all over the place. And I would like to bring up, it was mentioned, Blake talked about his voting record, but just last Tuesday, he approved to push this through again. So I'm not sure what he was just saying, but he certainly seems to be in support of it, whereas I am not.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with Lance this time. Lance, the Argus did mention, as we know, there was agreement, support for bringing back the city planning in-house planning department. There was a concern by the public, how do we retain the skilled and professional planners that have the familiarity and have the background and understand and have been part of Petaluma's successes in planning? How do we retain some of those individuals' thoughts?
How long?
Oh, a minute.
A minute, okay. Yeah, one of the reasons I actually ran was to advocate for bringing planning in-house. So it looks like I've already accomplished quite a bit because I didn't know everybody agreed with that. I know that some of the employees of the M Group actually were former city planning employees, and I would assume they would maybe try to come back. And I would basically start, if I was bringing it back in-house, I would find the areas they're most deficient in and bring those in-house first, which might be the permitting process. So I would, as quickly as possible, function by function, try to bring things back in-house. That is a rational way. Unfortunately, since we've outsourced the whole planning department, we don't have institutional memory. I mean, we have a planning department of 1 employee. So yes, I would support the most expedited method to bring things back in-house.
Thank you. Brian, your thoughts?
Thank you. Our community development department, which includes planning, building, and housing, actually has 5 people for the record. I support bringing our planning department back in-house. We have to have strike the right balance. And the way you do things like this is you trust the people that are gonna actually implement this stuff. I don't know the best way to do it, but I know that I want to have our full-time staff be in-house. I want to build a bench of institutional wisdom that currently resides, a lot of it within the M Group. And, you know, to me, it's not as quickly as possible as doing it as effectively as possible and making sure we don't lose a whole bunch of really important knowledge that's currently housed outside of our city. And so, you know, this isn't a simple thing. It's not just, you know, get rid of the M Group. Like, you know, we're not going to solve this with rhetoric. We're going to solve this by trusting the people inside that know how to do this properly. So thank you.
Thank you, JJ.
Yeah, I should start by apologizing to the people who work in the planning department for my comments. I didn't mean to imply that they were horrible individuals. It was the process in which I had to work that was horrible. I'm sure there are people that work for M Group that are decent people and they're not necessarily at fault. And to keep the expertise, I think it's reasonable to vet the M Group employees to see who would want to stay as a city employee, keep that knowledge. So yeah, simple answer.
Thank you, Frank.
So one of the things I appreciate about my business background, oftentimes you get faced with, tough challenges. You're handed a project and you have to get it done. You have to figure out how to work with the right kind of people to get it done. And so through that, I've been very adept at collaborating with the right people. We have some wonderful people that work for our city staff. including our city manager, assistant city manager, and along with our mayor and folks on the city council. So I would certainly go to those resources and work together with them to put a plan in place to transition. Thank you.
Thank you. What do you think, Blake?
So I've had to work with a lot of government departments, both big and small, over the years as being a public servant. And one thing I can tell you is when you're building a new department, and this will effectively be a new department, you've got to have knowledge and experience as kind of the core or the hub, and then you expand out with your spokes circling it, much like a wheel. My focus in bringing our planning staff in-house would be to fill our senior roles. We need to do that first, and that might take a bit of time just because they tend to be more expensive. But bring them in first, have them set, build the department around them, assuming they actually know who they're working with and the kind of structures they need. And then we start hiring outward. And that's how you start to add in the mid-tier staff and lower tier staff to build out a full department. And obviously we'd focus on things, everything from long-term planning to a permit department. But this is how we would get it done. And I think it's a very reasonable request.
Thank you, Alex.
So, I do feel that we need to bring planning back in-house, and how we'll retain those people is we will use, what institutional knowledge that we still have remaining to train people up, use people like Pam Tuff to help, bring up the new people. And, I think like Petaluma is the vibiest town, and we need to make planning the vibiest department at the city.
Thank you, Mike.
I'm just chuckling at that one. Vivius department, that's great. Well, I will say that this has been a sea change because a year or two ago, the civil grand jury issued a report highlighting this issue, and the city had to vote on a response to that. And I was on the losing end of a 6-1 vote because the council majority basically told the grand jury to leave us alone. We like things the way they were. So I've been advocating for this for a while. But I think there have been some really thoughtful comments on the dais here. We definitely, I think there are many very capable employees with the M Group, some of whom, as was mentioned, worked for the city planning department before 2008. And I would love to see them come back on as city employees. And it will have to be a gradual process. We'll continue to have to rely on outside planners, M Group or other, for certain specialized needs that don't justify a full-time position in-house. But it's going to be a process. Thank you.
Thank you. Very thoughtful remarks. I agree, Mike. So we're going to start, Brian, with you. We've been doing a lot of talk about building. Why leave now? So any development, whether residential or commercial, requires infrastructure and maintenance to handle traffic, water, sewer, utilities, public safety, et cetera. With water supply being a very key component, what areas do you think need to be given highest priority to handle our growth?
When you say areas, you mean infrastructure?
Mm-hmm. Of those, all those kinds of things, maintenance, water, sewer, utilities, safety.
Yeah, I'd say right now, maintenance. We've, the development, maintenance in our, in roads. I mean, when you look at, we've got water rates that cover the maintenance and the repairs of our water infrastructure, but we don't have that for roads. And as we've seen, we have, overextended ourselves in debt on the quality of our roads. We have approved project after project with inadequate transportation infrastructure, and that needs to stop. We need to be, approving projects. And one of the beauties of infill projects is that they don't require, a whole heck of a lot of new infrastructure, but they generate more income for the city. So you're actually getting a better return on your investment and helping to fund infrastructure improvements. From a water standpoint, multifamily buildings use 30 to 40% less water than single family buildings. There's a lot of different things that we can do to make sure that we're being wise with our resources and approving developments that are financially sound. this whole issue of, environmentally sound, fiscally sound. That's why I've been endorsed by, every environmental group in Sonoma County. I've been endorsed by our police, our fire, and our teacher unions. They know that I'm looking at every mayor in Petaluma, for crying out loud, because they're seeing that I'm taking a strong look at our growth and making sure that we're growing in a way that's fiscally and environmentally sustainable.
Thank you, JJ.
I think I heard that was an infrastructure.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't matter whether it's residential or commercial, it requires infrastructure. What aspect do you think is most important we should focus on?
I think our near-term focus should be on our roads and sidewalks. I think they had been neglected. I know over the past couple of years, more money has been made available to road repairs. And I know there's a priority to those. As an outsider, I would question some of those priorities. For example, for me to ride my bike from where I live on the southeast side to downtown, I spend most of my time on roads that don't have potholes, but have enough micro cracks in them that it's really challenging for me to do that ride. So things like that, not just for cars, but for bikes also, I think roads are my priority.
Thank you, Frank.
Sure, I would continue on in the same vein with infrastructure, road infrastructure. Right now, every infill development that's happening, we've got one that's happening in District 4 with the Creekwood. And as I've been out talking to neighbors, the number one thing that folks are concerned about is additional traffic and additional parking. And that's something that as we continue to build, which we will have to, people are going to continue to be more and more concerned about, and traffic's going to feel more and more worse. And so as we continue to build our roads, we need to do so. And, we've talked about complete street design standards. Not only does that make our roads safer for walking next to and crossing safely, but it also improves traffic flow. Really an emphasis on our road infrastructure to improve traffic flow, as well as continue to evolve our active transportation network to give folks other choices besides cars, in addition to continuing to evolve our transit network.
Thank you, Blake.
So I would continue to talk about road maintenance, but keeping in mind that not only do we need the complete streets policy in place, we need to be looking at projects, especially infill projects, and having the plan for the infrastructure maintenance dealt with ahead of time. Usually that comes later, and frankly, that puts us in the budget positions we've been in all of these years. But it's not just about looking at road repair. We should also be looking at the continued expansion of our bus infrastructure. This is why I want to see us look at how we use our VMT mitigation process to turn that into a funding source for expanded bus infrastructure. We currently don't have a full policy on what a VMT mitigation looks like. And that could be a valuable way to expand out bus stops, expand out routing, and expand the number of bus and vehicle shuttle service that we have. The other thing that I think we need to be doing when it comes to prioritization is preparing long-term for projects like Ravenna. That was something that was forced upon us. It went into an area that really did not have good infrastructure already. This city is going to need to start planning and looking at areas where a sudden 100% affordable project might get dropped in that currently doesn't have the road repair, the electrical, or any of the infrastructure for it, and start prioritizing where those future needs can be met. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex, your thoughts?
So I think that we've got an aging sewer system that's going to be needed brought up sooner than later. I think it's wonderful that we have our UGB because it helps us with things like water, which are the finite resource. And I remember being at a Sigma meeting a couple of years ago where they're trying to study just how much water we actually do have and looking at well users. And if the city's going to continue to develop and grow, we really can't go beyond our resources. Otherwise, we have to take them from elsewhere, and we're no better than LA at that point. I think that, as we grow, we need to keep roads in mind. I know we're trying to cut down on cars, but I think the reality is that they won't ever go away. So we can't continue to constrain the roads for cars and build thousands of homes at the same time. I think things like having a crosstown connector, the two being Rainier and Caulfield, I think that Caulfield offers us a better opportunity to connect the south end of Petaluma, that would greatly help all the businesses on the south end of the boulevard. It would make it easier to get on and off the freeway, and it would clear up all sorts of congestion around D Street, Lakeville, and Washington and Lakeville. I think that, we can continue to improve and expand our public transportation. Obviously, SMART is doing a great job already. And I think that we also need to keep in mind that it does flood here in Petaluma, so we have to strengthen our flood control and make sure that we're mitigating flood risks as much as possible.
Thank you. Mike, ideas around infrastructure? Any emphasis you have in mind?
So I think it's important to start with a bit of a history lesson here. The reason we got into this infrastructure deficit is that back in the 70s, people ran for city council promising to keep property taxes as low as possible. So we were a low service level, low tax level jurisdiction. And then Prop 13 happened in 78, and we had to have our property taxes crammed down along with every other taxing jurisdiction to fit within the 1% cap. So we've been under investing for 4 decades in streets, every other aspect of infrastructure that's funded by the general fund. So our police stations, our fire station, our fire equipment, our police equipment, the historic library was mentioned. So it's only with the passage of Prop U very recently that we've been able to dig out from under this 4 decades of underinvestment. And so you're seeing that funding pointed towards streets, certainly, and public safety buildings are going to be getting some attention in the very near future. Water and sewer are not funded out of the general fund, so those are in better shape, but there are still some things that need to be done. We have something called the force main, which is the sewer pipe that carries all the city's raw sewage from the old sewer plant to Ellis Creek. It's beyond its useful life. It needs to be replaced. You really don't want that thing to fail, so that's a high priority for us right now.
And Lance, you get to wrap up this thought.
So in the long run, single-family homes can't pay for the necessary infrastructure to support them. So higher density infill is a great way to go. It also will increase tax revenue. And also the 15-minute centers. I see the maps behind us for the general plan for different activity centers. And if we do implement that, that'll reduce the traffic on the roads because they won't have to drive across town to do whatever they're trying to do. And that's another reason why I'm against the overlay, because it further concentrates development downtown and having people having to drive across town. So I think just basically infill and intelligent planning so that you reduce the need for people to drive long distances, and that'll go a long way.
Thank you. We're going to do just one more question. There's no need for us all to have fanny fatigue. So we'll do one more question. The candidates will give us like half a minute of why they're the best, and then we'll go ahead and close. This last question, we might as well talk fairgrounds. JJ, you're going to lead off with this. What are your thoughts on the fairgrounds? What would you like to see happen there? There have been a number of outreach meetings, hoping to get input from the community. People still, in spite of what I see everywhere, are afraid that we're going to build houses on the fairgrounds. Maybe we are. What would you like to see happen at the fairgrounds based on the input that you've heard?
Well, I know that fire and police would like to have a central facility at the fairground. I support that, especially given the crowded nature of the police station now. I learned when I met with them that we have 3 jails that are full of storage. So it's, and they have to park blocks away. So I think that's a good use of fairground. Anything else? I'm kind of open, like I don't have a set agenda for, I don't think there should be housing in the fairground. It's ours. I've attended many great events there. I think it's an ideal public place. Oh, and I made a comment at one of the previous forums about the lack of fireworks at the fairgrounds. And what I meant was actually attending the fireworks at the fairgrounds. I kind of missed that. So yeah, whatever we want to do with it, it's ours.
Perfect, thanks. Frank, your idea of what to do, what not to do at the fairgrounds?
Sure. So I'm a huge supporter of improving the fairgrounds and making this cultural landmark a centerpiece for our community. I was struck while I was out canvassing and I just knocking on doors randomly, and I came across a gentleman. And I've shared this story before, but for me, it bears repeating because it really left a mark with me. I knocked on the door and the gentleman I answered, and I introduced who I was, and he started telling me about the fairgrounds. And this gentleman, he runs an organization here in town that puts an annual event on at the fairgrounds. And they raise over $100,000 a year every year for the Polite Class Foundation. And he started talking about how after the city took control of the fairgrounds, it became harder for him to use the fairgrounds. And I empathized with that. And I thought, man, we really need to make sure that we make it easy for our community to use the fairgrounds. But then he started going on and he started talking about all these great ideas. And it really resonated with me. And it showed me that we've got people in our community that care about it and have a lot of great ideas. And so I really want to make sure that we're engaged. I'd like to move as quickly as reasonably possible to really have an impact. There's a lot of work to be done, but with the public's help, and maybe, I would propose something like a fair and expo board to really leverage the creative spirit of the community to take this gem to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake.
The fairgrounds is incredibly special to me. I've been going to the Speedway since I was a kid. I still go there now, much to the chagrin of my parents. I went to school on the fairgrounds. I don't know if folks know this, but Petaluma Christian Academy had their portables on the fairgrounds. And so I got an up-close look at both the facilities and how they were maintained and how they were sometimes not maintained. My wife and I were emergency response volunteers working through PPSC during the glass fire and helped coordinate emergency response out of the fairgrounds. It's incredibly important to us. I just want to see us really show it the love it deserves. This is why I want to focus on making sure we put the investments it needs in its infrastructure and its facilities. I want to see us expand the agricultural component there by really turning it into an agricultural hub for small farmers and the broader farming community. I think it'd be great if we could partner with UC Davis on that. I would like to see us expand community activities and the ability to rent out spaces and take value in this park that we have that's been part of us for all of this time. I absolutely want to see us add a real emergency response center there for when the next big fire comes. I want to obviously protect, but then invest in the Speedway. I would love the idea of all electric cars there. And I want to see us add the fire station that's been proposed, which would go currently on what is a parking lot, and add a police station there as well. Thank you.
Alex?
So the fairgrounds means a lot to me. It is the heart of Petaluma. It is a huge community center, and it has been for generations. I did a lot there related to emergency services during the fire. I brought over 1,000 animals that had to be evacuated out of there, and that was a crucial area for us to have that, because otherwise we'd have been driving another hour to the next fairgrounds where we could put them. If we didn't have that, a lot of animals would have died, and it would have been a terrible thing. I think too, for other natural disasters, it's crucial as well. During earthquakes, floods, during COVID, it was a very big thing too. I think that the fairgrounds was always a place where it was kind of misnomer that you couldn't really go there. You actually could. People could go there at any point, and it was very easy to schedule events there, and people would have small parties or large gatherings, anything in between. I hope that now as a city we can preserve that. I hope that we can. For Rob Anello and the Rip City Riders, as Frank mentioned, get them back next year. It was a terrible thing that they left this year because they do raise about $30,000 for polyclass and others every year. And so to lose them, I think is a terrible thing. So I think that as a city going forward, we need to preserve the fairgrounds as a place for everybody to come to.
Mike, fairground thoughts?
Oh, I think everyone in the community treasures the fairgrounds property. It was purchased by Petaluma voters in a special election in 1910 for use as a public park, and that included the parcels that have since been carved off for the library and the swim center. And the purchase price was $20,000 in gold coin. And it was for use as a public park. And I think it's been a great fairgrounds over the decades. It's never lived up to its potential as a public park. And I really will want to see us involve the community about what kinds of additional park uses should be placed on the property. That park use is not legally binding on us because we're a charter city. I do support putting Fire Station 4 and a new police station there. But beyond that, I want to maintain the park use. Switching over to the fair piece of it, my colleague Karen Now and I met recently with a couple of fair board members, and it was a publicly noticed meeting. And what we learned was that with the current financial arrangement with the city, the fair board is burning through its reserves at a pace of about $600,000 a year. And I don't think the community knows that. And that's only sustainable for about 2 more years, and then the fair will just not be there. So I think there is an urgent need for the city to reevaluate its financial arrangement with the fair district. Thank you.
Lance, what's your vision for the fairground?
Well, I would like to continue all of its traditional uses and also to use it for the city's advantage where we can. I do support moving emergency response there, but I would like it to be part of an overall plan. It seems like a lot of times we put in one piece and then later on we put in another piece. And it would be good to have an overall plan before we do major development there. I know they spent like hundreds of thousands of dollars with Healthy Democracy, getting people giving speeches and getting citizens feedback. And I'm just not sure what happened to all that. I don't know what the feedback was, but it would be nice to have an open process and really have the whole community involved and figure out what to do with it. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Brian.
Thank you. So I think everybody has their attachments. I grew up showing cows there. I spent hundreds of dollars at Dodge City on birthdays. I go to the speedways on Saturday nights and just have a ton of memories. And I really respect the multi-generational components of the fairgrounds. What came from that process was a clear set of guiding principles of what the community wants. It wants it to be used for agriculture, emergency response, and they want a heck of a lot more public access. And so when I think of the fairgrounds and what we're trying to do right now, is we're trying to give every single person in this room, everybody watching TV, everybody who's going to bed right now because they have school tomorrow, a reason to go to the fairgrounds on a weekly basis. It is the geographic center of our city, but I wouldn't say it's quite the heart of our city because so many people don't step foot on there every day. But if we give people a reason to go to the fairgrounds, to come together and to gather, things like the Luma Ice, moving our farmers market there, adding a BMX track there, things like that, it's going to get different generations of people going to the center of our city every day. And that's when it becomes truly the heart of our city. And so, I'm really focused on the public access component of it and moving forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, that was fun. So now we're actually going to, because Mike started, we're going to start with Lance in terms of your wrap up. Give your very best 30-second commercial on why you are the one. Just remind everybody what you've got to bring to the table. Thank you.
Well, I used to run a gallery with 40 artists who had 40 different opinions. And I kept it open for 15 years. And so I'm very good about getting feedback and reaching consensus. And I find the way our city government runs now, it seems to be things railroaded through without public input. So I would just like to change the culture of City Hall so that we're not looking at hearings where we think we're looking at toddlers playing with loaded handguns and looking in horror. So I would like us to have a more open process.
Thank you. Brian?
Thank you. I'm the candidate who's running a campaign focused on our kids, who's focused on working families who are being priced out, focused on young people who are struggling to see a path here, focused on seniors who are worried about aging in place, and focused on small businesses who are struggling with rising costs. I've been endorsed, and that's why I've been endorsed by every mayor of Petaluma who's alive, our former police chief, Ken Sabano, every Sonoma County environmental group, our firefighters, our police, and our teachers unions. And I hope I can earn your vote. Thank you.
JJ?
I'm not running against anything or anybody. District 4 has no council member, and there wasn't one when I decided to jump in. I'm a problem solver, so I'm asking for your vote so that I can help solve whatever issues the city may have. Other than that, that's it.
Thank you, JJ. Frank?
Thank you. So as a newcomer to politics, I realized that I needed to get up to speed pretty quick in order to be effective in this role. And so I've gone out and I've knocked on over 1,300 doors in my district, and I've talked to a lot of people. I've also realized that there's a lot of complex issues like housing. So I've spent time with Generation H and Urban Chat and Know Before You Grow to get up to speed on housing. I've spent time with Petaluma People Services to understand social issues and homelessness. I spent time with our police department to understand public safety and the folks at the battery storage. Thank you. So I'm working really hard to get up to speed, and I'll serve you well. Thank you.
Blake?
My name's Blake Hooper, and I want to be your advocate and fight for you at City Hall. I've lived in the 5th District my whole life. I live there now with my lovely wife, Ileana, who's here today and has sat through many of these. I have spent most of my public career trying to fight for and learn the tools needed to help bring needed changes and protections to the city of Petaluma. I've worked at the federal and state level. I've served on the Planning Commission, Transit Advisory Committee, Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee, and others. I'm here to fight for working families and seniors and to make sure that we're a vibrant community that can still thrive. I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Alex?
My name is Alex DeCarly. I will unite Petaluma with everyone who is open and willing, and all are welcome. I've brought people together in this community from all sides that wouldn't otherwise get along. And they unite with me because they believe in me and they believe in what I stand for. They stand with me despite those who would try to tear me down with fear and hate. It is a desperate act, and I thought that's something Petaluma stood against. Division is not the answer, unity is. I will be a voice for the Petaluman who has yearned to be heard for so long. I know that you will join me to be a part of it all, and that you'll remember me as you vote on Election Day.
Thank you, Alex. And wrap it up, Mike.
Well, first of all, thank you all for sitting through 2 hours of this. It's very tolerant of you. I want to kind of respond to a couple points that were made earlier. First, I'm very proud of my record supporting affordable housing in this community. I'm the only council member within memory who's been awarded PEP Housing Senior Housing Hero Award. There were a couple of projects I didn't provide financial support for because they had either 0.4 or 0.5 or 0.4 or 0.5 parking spaces per unit. And I think that's just totally unrealistic.
Great, thank you. Excellent speed talking. I'm very impressed. As a wrap up, did I miss Lance? No, I think we're good. That's okay. I do not mind a reminder in case I, did somebody twice. So for over 60 years, AEW has sponsored candidate debates and forums, most frequently with our colleagues at the League of Women Voters of Sonoma County. We both encourage informed and active participation in government. Because you're here tonight or watching from elsewhere, you clearly agree with that philosophy. You can find some additional nonpartisan information on all the election candidates and on propositions, state propositions and local at the League of Women Voters website. If you go to LWV for League of Women Voters, Sonoma.org, and then you can scroll down for recordings. So, in a little while, the Petaluma Community Access, thank you very much for recording tonight. We'll pass that on and those will be posted. Now, we'd like to thank these candidates for joining us this evening, so please give them a round of applause. Gentlemen, we appreciate your willingness to serve. So on behalf of AEW and the League, I ask you to remember to vote on Tuesday, November 5th. And you know what I always say, vote early and vote often. Good night.